Hey friends! My good friend Logical One had actually posted a video that sparked this. As you can see from the title, I had a very unique experience. My dad, homeless. He actually had different levels of homelessness, I guess I would say. There were times that he did live in a home, there were times that he lived in a van, there were times that he lived in a tent, there were times where he lived on people's couches. It was always just like a different thing. There were also times that he lived in a prison, but you know, it was just a very unique way to have a parent involved in your life, and I just thought I would tell some really great and fun stories. I'm not trying to make this at all like a sad or weird or like making fun of anyone. Homelessness is a very serious problem and it is heartbreaking, and honestly I think that it is something that should be talked about more. But from my personal experience with my dad, the way that he was just a really happy, funny, crazy guy. His lifestyle was his own doing and kind of his own choice, and it isn't something that just was we swept under the rug or anything like that. It was just that's the way he chose to live, so he lived. And honestly, he lived a lot more than most people I know. So I just thought this would be a really great thing to do in his memory. I don't ever want to forget these things, so hopefully I can look back one day and remember these stories and laugh as well, because Willie was an interesting guy. Interesting probably isn't the right word for him, and honestly doesn't even begin to cover it, but you know, see for yourself. Let me know if you could think of a better word for this guy, because I've been trying my whole life and I still can't figure out what to call him. So when I was really young, I do remember him living in this little cottage that was kind of behind his mom's house, and that was pretty normal. I didn't really think too much of it. I mean, I always kind of knew that he was a little out there, but you know, when it's your own family, you just think it's normal. And yeah, there were times that he lived there. I remember times where he lived in prison where I didn't really see him too much, but I get some really funny phone calls. There were times that he lived in a van parked on my grandmother's property. There were times that he just lived in a van. There were times where he parked the van down by the river.
And I live in a van down by the river.
Yes, literally, my dad lived in a van down by the river, and yes, it was funny every single time. There are also times that he just decided to, you know, climb up the side of Diamond Head and pitch a tent. That was probably one of my favorite places that he lived, because it required an entire hike just to go home. And again, this guy, he was not a small man. So it was pretty great to just follow him up this hike, end up in this giant like field basically, and he had neighbors. He definitely had the biggest lot to himself, and it was like this whole system, but it was just this crazy thing that all the tourists are just driving around Diamond Head, going on hikes on the other side. Little do they know, if they had just hiked a little bit more, they would have just walked into a whole neighborhood of people. He also liked to just randomly mess with me and send me the weirdest pictures of himself, which I will definitely be putting up for you to see. And it was always the most random things. Like, I remember it was just New Year's Eve, and you know, you would think, well, what would a parent, you know, send to their child on a New Year's Eve? Maybe Happy New Year's, maybe hi, I love you. But no, out of nowhere, we hadn't been speaking. It had been a few weeks since I spoke with him, I believe, and out of nowhere, he decides to send me this crazy picture of himself, from what I can tell, naked, with his stomach just covering everything up, and he's completely wrapped in Christmas lights, wearing a police hat and aviators. First of all, what poor soul did he con into wrapping him in the Christmas lights, plugging them in, and then taking the photo? It honestly baffled me. I wish I could say that I wasn't surprised that it was so crazy, but at the same time, I was just like, how do you come up with this? I want all the free time in the world to come up with these crazy ideas like you. He also decided that for my birthday one year, he would dress up as Happy and Sad Spider-Man, which was just him wearing the same pair of sunglasses right side up and upside down, making two different faces and poofing out his belly or sucking it in. Somehow he was able to manipulate his huge stomach in a fashion that it actually did look like his stomach was either sad or happy. I don't know. This man was crazy. There was also this time that he decided that he was going to come pick me up from my grandmother's house. I must have been about 14 at the time, and he decided that he was going to show up randomly in a car that I had never seen before, and he was going to teach me how to drive. So he shows up and he calls me about 5 minutes before he's about to be there from a number that, of course, I don't know, because if I'm getting a number that I don't have saved, it's probably my dad. Anyway, I pick up the phone, he tells me to come outside, he'll be there in a few minutes, whatever. So I listen. I come outside, he's in this white PT Cruiser, which, again, I had never seen before. He's like, come on, let's go. I have no idea where we're going, but, you know, true Willie fashion, we go. So he takes me to this mall that was near my grandma's house that I was living at the time, and he's like, all right, I'm gonna teach you how to drive, come on. So, okay, I'm like, all right, yeah, this is normal. Dads teach their kids how to drive. Sure, yeah, okay, whatever. You know, yeah, it's 10 p.m. on a school night and I'm 14 years old, but whatever. So anyway, I get in the car, he trades me seats, and he starts trying to teach me. This car is manual. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm nervous. I'm confused. I have a lot of questions, but you know, that's kind of the usual when you hang out with Willie. So I start trying to drive. I was horrible. I still don't know how to drive manual. Maybe one day. But I begin to ask him questions like, hey Dad, whose car is this? That's when he decides to tell me, oh no, don't worry about it. My friend, he's, you know, he's a drug dealer and the cops are looking for him. Some of the guys are looking for him. So he's holed up in some hotel or something and I'm just taking his car out. So you mean to tell me that there are not only police, but also other people who may or may not have good intentions looking for a drug dealer that owns this vehicle, and you decided to pick up your 14-year-old daughter and teach her how to drive in it? I mean, I guess the thought was nice that he's like, I have a car, I'm gonna go see my daughter, but at the same time, maybe he didn't think that one all the way through. So we keep driving because, you know, at that point, we're already in the car. And yeah, I don't get any better at it. I end up trying to go up a hill and stalling so badly that whatever was in the trunk of the car just starts shaking like crazy, everything's shifting, he's freaking out. I pull over to the side, he jumps out, we both jump out, we go open the trunk, he's like going crazy, trying to figure out what's going on. There's these two big bins in it, and there's all these noises happening. And he's like, oh, the first one he opens, there's just a whole bunch of firearms in there. I saw nothing, I asked no questions. He closes it. The second one he opens is just full of a bunch of adult toys, and I guess I had shifted the car so wrong and stalled out so hard that those adult toys decided to turn themselves on and just start moving. So he wrestles with those for a while. He just told me batteries are cheaper than boyfriends. Another life lesson. Thanks, Dad. He gets them under control. We get back in the car, and I just asked him to drive me home. At that point, I was just like, you know what? I'm not gonna get any better. Now I feel even more afraid to be in this car. You know, I think going home sounds nice. That's a nice fond memory. I'm pretty sure that everyone's learning how to drive story goes that way, right? There was another time that I decided to see him. I think I must have been around 18 at this point, and I was driving my mom's giant blue Windstar that she had kind of beat to hell, and this thing was being held together with zip ties and all kinds of crazy. It just wasn't a good situation. Anyway, that was the car that I was driving around in, and one night I decided to go see my dad. So he's like, oh, you know, we should go and visit my friends, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, sure, you know what, whatever you want. I go pick him up, we go down to Waikiki to go see his friends, we go to their apartment. I was not ready for the night that I was about to have. Clearly, everyone in this household was a fan of some sort of drug, and I got there and they decided to partake in whatever they were partaking in, and I made myself busy because they had some cats. So I decided to go and play with them and see them, and my dad asked, hey, can we drive down to the beach and get some more sand to use for the cat's litter box? So the setup was, there was one of those stand-up showers, and they had been just laying sand, like, from the beach down on the floor of the shower, and that was where the cats were going to the restroom. And I love animals, so I was like, yes, of course, I will do anything for these animals. I feel sad that they live like this, but whatever. So I go down to the beach, we get a bucket, we fill it with sand, we bring it back, we come back to the house. I think that's gonna be the end of the night. No. We are there probably until about 3 a.m. because they showed my dad what YouTube was for the first time. He is sitting glued to the computer, looking up his favorite Tupac song and just playing it over and over. I had never heard the song Uppercut. I had then heard it for about 2 hours straight before I finally asked my dad if we could change the song. Somewhere in the course of that night, this other woman comes in. She just walks right in. She doesn't live there. She doesn't knock, but she walks in. So this must be a normal thing. She has like a bunch of bags full of stuff, and she immediately goes somewhere and changes her clothes and comes back. She's sitting there, we're talking, I get introduced to her name was Pickles. I find out that her occupation is that she is someone who works, I find out that she is a sex worker, and she is getting ready to go out and work. So I'm sitting there, 18 years old, not really been exposed to this side of the world yet, and she asks me how I did my makeup. I started explaining it to her. She pulls out a bunch of her makeup, asks us if I can do it. So I do. Meanwhile, my dad is still sitting there trying to figure out how to work YouTube. His knowledge of the internet, his mind is blown. He's not understanding it, but he's loving it. And yeah, I'll put some pictures of that night too. It ended with Pickles trying to pay me in a Jaeger bomb, which I declined because underage and also scared and also need to drive home. And finally I told my dad, you know what, we gotta pack it up, I gotta go to bed, and I dropped him off at home, went home, and went to bed. Again, another lovely bonding night that I will never forget, that is for sure. I mean, this definitely wasn't a conventional father-daughter relationship, but at the same time, I'm really happy for some of the lessons that I learned from him or because of him, and honestly, I'm just trying to keep a hold of all of the really great memories. Sure, there are some that are rough and bad and whatever, and I mean, I'm sure there are plenty of people who can relate to that. And for a long time, I feel like I was just kind of embarrassed, or I didn't want to admit that I was ever affected. But I am. I definitely am. And that's something that I'm going to carry with me forever. But I know that there are a ton of people who can relate to that and understand what it is like. And unfortunately, yes, he did pass away about 1.5 years ago. And part of me understanding and grieving and learning and just getting over everything and processing it, part of that is me trying to just accept the really good memories that I have and keeping those alive, because, you know, there were some really great times. Sure, there were some hard times, but there were also some really hilarious times. Maybe he wasn't my dad, but he was definitely a really great friend, and I am excited to just keep remembering and sharing his stories because they're just too good to keep to myself. And everyone in my family can agree, and hopefully people will, you know, come from my family and speak about them too, because there's a lot of stories here. So I hope this was entertaining. I hope that you enjoyed it as much as I enjoy thinking about it. And maybe we can start a conversation being more open about, you know, maybe not everyone has some like picket fence family, even though we pretend like we do, because it's life. Things are messy. Nothing's just clean cut, you know? And I think it's a good thing to be able to be open about that, be vulnerable about it, ask for help if you need it, and just connect with people on it, you know? I mean, what else is going to get us by besides knowing that there's always going to be someone there that understands when we need them to? So thanks for listening, hopefully laughing, maybe even crying, I don't know. I never know what I'm going to end up doing. But I hope that you're having a lovely day or night or evening or whatever you may be having, and I look forward to speaking with more of my friends soon.